Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are stepping into an absolute masterclass on a foundational pillar of the Cambridge AS and A-level accounting syllabus, the double entry system and accounting equation. Now look, whether you're just starting your revision journey or you're doing a last-minute final review, mastering this specific topic is absolutely essential. Why? Because according to the principal examiners themselves, this topic appears in literally every single examination series. You simply can't avoid it. But today we aren't just going to rehash basic textbook math. We are putting on the examiner's lens. We're going to dissect complex, high-tariff questions. Those massive 9 to 15 mark essay and scenario questions that make or break your grade. We're going to master time allocation, deploy advanced critical thinking strategies, and figure out exactly what the Cambridge assessment grading team is looking for to award those top-tier marks. Get ready, because this is about strategy just as much as it is about accounting. Okay, let's dive right into this. Here is our rigorous, time-blocked structural blueprint for today's session. We'll start by cracking open the examiner's playbook. Then, move into the 3 cognitive domains you're actively tested on. After that, we'll explore the standardized processing sequence to lock in those crucial method marks, tackle mastering comparative analysis, and finally, review the top 3 examiner warnings to keep you totally out of trouble. Let's get to work.
Section 1. The examiner's playbook and exactly what top performers do differently.
I want to introduce you to the core philosophy of Cambridge examiners. Look, passing this exam isn't just about balancing a ledger or getting the final number right on a balance sheet. Top performers approach this paper with a completely different mental framework. To prove this, let's look at a direct quote from the syllabus framework itself. Examiners state that top-performing students exhibit, and I quote, connected conceptual understanding transferable to unfamiliar contexts. Think about what that really means for a second. The examiners are flat out telling us they aren't looking for candidates who just rote memorized formulas or blindly copy T accounts. They want highly adaptable knowledge. To give you an idea of how this plays out, think of 2 archetypal students I coach all the time. Let's call them Alex and Sam. Now, Alex is highly technical. Alex excels at memorizing formulas and facts, but completely freezes up on open-ended evaluation questions. Then you have Sam. Sam is a highly creative thinker, fantastic at building arguments, but really struggles with structural precision and exam timing. If Alex and Sam are looking at the syllabus quote, they're both going to struggle, unless they combine their skills. Cambridge will purposefully present you with a weird, unfamiliar business context, maybe a specialized nonprofit or bizarre manufacturing scenario. You have to prove that your foundational double-entry understanding can bend, adapt, and solve that specific problem. This brings us to the ultimate academic benchmark that completely separates the average students from the elite. It's the battle of analytical depth versus superficial breadth. Let's go back to our students, Alex and Sam. In a peer deconstruction debate over a 15-mark question, Alex usually pushes for a purely factual approach, dumping every single double-entry rule onto the page, hoping something sticks. That is superficial breadth, and examiners hate it. Sam, on the other hand, tries to argue for a broader conceptual perspective but forgets the hard numbers. That's also a trap. Top-tier candidates merge both. They display true analytical depth. Before they even write a word, they dissect the anatomy of the command words. If the question says analyze, they know they need to break the accounting data down into its component parts. But if the command word is evaluate, they know they have to make a reasoned, balanced judgment based on that data. If it says explain, they're providing a clear, detailed account. But if it says to what extent, they are actively weighing up 2 sides of a financial argument. They don't just show what happened in the accounts, they articulate exactly why it happened under the specific constraints of the prompt. Let's transition into Section 2, the 3 cognitive domains, and how you are actually assessed on the examiner's rubric. We really need to demystify exactly how this exam is graded so you can unlock the top-tier marking bands. According to the framework, the assessment objectives, often called AOs, hit 3 distinct cognitive domains. First, we have AO1, knowledge and understanding. Second, AO2, analysis. And third, AO3, evaluation. It is absolutely critical to realize that you cannot get an A grade just by being brilliant at one of these. Successful candidates must demonstrate competence across all 3. You have to know the rules, that's AO1. You have to be able to analyze the raw data using those rules, that's AO2. And finally, you have to evaluate the financial outcome to make a sound judgment, that's AO3. Think back to our student Alex. Alex dominates AO1 but leaves AO3 blank. Sam writes a beautiful AO3 evaluation but loses all the AO1 knowledge marks. To fix this, I teach something called the paragraph balance formula. Every time you write an extended response, your paragraph must state a fact, analyze what that fact does to the specific business in the prompt, and evaluate whether that's ultimately a positive or negative outcome.
Fact, analyze, evaluate. Boom, full marks.
This perfectly tees up Section 3, the standardized processing sequence, and how to secure your method marks.
Okay, right before we solve the absolute hardest part of this processing sequence, I want to take a quick pause. If you're serious about mastering these high-level techniques, you need to subscribe to the channel Ace the Exam's IGCE O and A levels at the handle @ace_the-exam_IGCE and enable all notifications right now. Seriously, do it. You do not want to miss a single weekly Cambridge Breakthrough strategy we release. All right, let's get back to it. We are looking at the absolute lifesaver known as the method mark strategy. In Cambridge accounting, the examiners frequently award marks for the systematic process you use to get to an answer, not just the final result on the bottom line. Look at this 5-step procedural framework on screen. This is the exact standardized sequence expected of you. Step 1 is where you deploy the 3-step question scan. You identify key elements, highlight the command word, and isolate the hidden constraints of the prompt. Step 2 is applying relevant principles. But look incredibly closely at Step 3. Execute analysis with clear working. I see students hit a major roadblock here all the time. They get stressed about exam timing, they rush the math in their head, and they just write down a final number. If that number is wrong because of a simple calculator slip, they get 0 marks. But if you pause, step back, and write down your clear working, showing you applied the correct double entry principles, you transition from a flawed answer to securing vital method marks even if the final tally's off. Then you verify your results, and Step 5, present them in the appropriate format. And speaking of that final step, presentation of information follows strict conventions: proper headings, correct terminology, appropriate formats, and clear annotation. Let's do a quick visual workshop. Imagine a poorly written student answer on the board right now. If I asked you to spot the flaws, what would you see? Often you'll see a T account with no title, dates missing from the margins, and generic words like money in instead of sales or bank. Examiners actively set traps to see if you'll slip up on these formatting rules. Remember, presentation isn't optional or just some nice-to-have bonus. These conventions are practical applications of professional accounting skills. If you hand over a messy, unlabeled ledger to a corporate client in the real world, they won't accept it. The Cambridge examiner won't either. You have to be meticulous. Let's move on to Section 4, Mastering Comparative Analysis and Unlocking Top Marks. We are now entering the territory of the hardest skill to master in the entire exam: evaluative thinking and critical analysis. How do you actually demonstrate critical analysis to an examiner who is grading thousands of papers? Top-scoring candidates do 3 things when tackling extended responses. First, they question assumptions rather than taking data at face value. If a business shows high profits, they ask, is this sustainable, or did they just sell off a major non-current asset? Second, they consider different perspectives. How might a shareholder view this transaction versus a supplier or a bank manager? And third, they justify every single decision with hard evidence drawn directly from the prompt. They don't just calculate numbers in a vacuum, they argue a compelling case using the numbers as their undeniable proof. A massive part of this evaluation is comparative analysis. The syllabus specifically states that effective comparative analysis requires identifying both similarities and differences. And look, you can't just list them bullet point style either. You must use comparative connectives, words like whereas, conversely, on the other hand, or similarly, to aggressively link your points together. Every single comparison must be anchored by evidence from the data, allowing you to draw really strong conclusions about the relative importance of those factors. This is how you prove that analytical depth we talked about earlier. This is the difference between a C-grade paragraph and an A-star paragraph. Let's move into Section 5, Top 3 Examiner Warnings and Avoiding These Common Traps. So the crucial point here is that understanding the theory is only half the battle. Knowing exactly where your peers typically fail is the other half. Every single year, thousands of students sit for this exam, and every single exam series, examiners see candidates lose points on exactly 3 specific repeated mistakes. We have extracted these straight from the principal examiner reports. Let's look at what they are so you do not repeat them. Here is the definitive breakdown. Mistake number 1. Answers regarding the double entry system and accounting equation are often way too vague. The solution? You must provide specific details drawn straight from the data. If the prompt says the rent is $5,000, you write $5,000. You don't just say rent increased. Mistake number 2. Students completely forget to check format and presentation, which we know costs professional marks. We've covered this, but it bears repeating. Draw your lines, write your dates. And mistake number 3. Giving generic textbook answers that are not specific to the context given in the question. This is the biggest trap of all. Remember, the examiner created a unique business scenario for a reason. If the question is about a sole trader who runs a local bakery and you start writing about the accounting principles of a massive multinational manufacturing corporation, the examiner is going to cross it out. Context and specific details are entirely non-negotiable if you want top marks. I also want to highlight this very specific examiner alert from the latest reports. Candidates consistently confuse key accounting terminology. For example, mixing up capital expenditure with revenue expenditure, or confusing a provision with a reserve. To prevent massive mark deductions in your extended responses, make it a habit to always define the key terms you are about to discuss right up front. It takes 2 seconds, but it immediately signals to the examiner that you have the requisite knowledge, and it confidently anchors your ensuing analysis. Let's synthesize our core takeaways today into 3 core memorable pillars so you can apply these structured insights immediately to your past paper practice. Think of this as your last 5 minutes review checklist. First, embrace the method mark strategy. Deploy the 3-step question scan and show clear working for every single mathematical step. Second, ensure you are balancing the cognitive domains using the paragraph balance formula. Push beyond mere factual knowledge into rigorous analysis and evaluated conclusions. And third, always keep those 3 examiner warnings in mind regarding strict formatting, business context, and specificity. If you do this, you'll experience the exact same breakthroughs my students Alex and Sam have when they finally see how the matrix works. I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to challenge your study habits. When you sit down today to do your next past paper, ask yourself honestly, are you prioritizing the clear, logical accounting process, or are you just racing the clock to find a final answer? Remember, in the eyes of a Cambridge examiner, the journey and the workings are just as vital as the destination. Take this examiner's lens, apply it to your practice, and watch your marks absolutely transform. Look, crushing Cambridge exams requires consistent strategy. It's not about being the smartest, it's about being the most strategic. So hit that subscribe button for Ace the Exam's IGCE O&A levels at the handle at acetheexam_IGCE. Turn on the notification bell so you get all our future exam hacks. And right now, I want you to go to the comments and leave a comment with your exact target grade. Put it out there, commit to it, and let's get to work. Thanks for joining me on this Masterclass Explainer, and happy studying.